Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Nitro Nights with me, Tom Deacon, your host. Now, the team and I bring you 3 episodes a week on a Monday, a Wednesday, and on a Friday. This is the show, if you are new to it, that brings you all of your esports racing needs. Plus, this is the best part, we have a brand new guest on every single show. Now, just to bring you up to speed, and if you're not already doing so, make sure you subscribe and follow us on Twitter for all of the latest. I can indeed tell you that this is episode 10. We have made it double figures. It's time to celebrate. And then we'll end it for now because we need to actually get into the show. We kickstart today with a Newsflash. Then we'll welcome our guest, Charlie Martin, who I cannot wait to get onto the show. We'll be talking all about sim racing. Plus, we will talk quick fire round questions. And we'll also talk about diversity in motor racing. Going to be a brilliant episode. So let's kickstart with the Newsflash. Now, this is very exciting news. Games and esports analytics provider Newzoo released a report on viewership changes during the COVID-19 lockdown. Now, many racing titles have seen an increase in viewership, which, as you can imagine, iRacing that stands out with 117% increase across YouTube and on Twitch. Now, as you can see from the graphic, you can see that incline, and people are using gaming as a means of social activity, while others are seeking escapism. Now, we've said it many times on Nitro Nights, the need and desire and love for sim racing has been growing, and we hope that it continues into the future. Also, on the news flash today, I want to talk about the FIA WTCR. What is it? Well, it's basically the best sim racers and real FIA WTCR drivers of the World Touring Car Cup going head to head. It's hashtag beat the pros. We're finding out mainly if the WTCR drivers have what it takes. First of all, we kickstarted Hungering. James Kirk, fantastic commentating. We even highlighted it on this show with Zoltan Juti and Donny Den doing a brilliant overtake to get 1 and 2 in the race there. But it was Slovakia that we went to, Slovakia Ring, and it was Baldi who got the first win. And then, as you can see here, Banky getting that second win. So cannot wait for round 3 of that. If you haven't already watched it, maybe go back and check it out. And finally, in the news flash today, we're talking about World of Outlaws, the greatest show on dirt. iRacing Sprint Cars Championship. There was one particular race in Limeland, which was fantastic, featuring a race of 20 drivers, 35 laps, gone through qualifying to get there. James Edens won that. But this one we're watching now is at Williams Grove, and Robbie Kendall doing a fantastic drive to come across the line in first place. Now, listen, stay tuned to watch the interview with Charlie Martin. And if you're just watching the news flash, you can also watch it. You just need to click here. All right then, guys, so joining us on Nitro Nights, we have none other than Charlie Martin, professional racing driver, in what appears to be a kind of brilliantly laid out office space that you're in, Charlie.
Thank you. Yes, this is my sort of second temporary sim room at the moment. My normal sim setup is upstairs in my spare bedroom, but because Formula E have kindly loaned me a sim to compete in the Formula E Race at Home Challenge, I've got two rooms going on, and I thought I'd try and theme it and make it look a little bit more racy, a bit less office-like. But clearly, that's still got a bit of office vibe going on.
No, I feel like it's looking fantastic actually at the moment, and this is the sort of lockdown moment. You're taking up sim racing, and this is what I really wanted to chat to you about because knowing that they've sent you this rig. Let's start beginning. Obviously, from a sim racing perspective, you had to learn all of this immediately, or were you familiar with sim racing before?
I was familiar with it. I mean, I guess last year I kind of got into working a bit in esports with Microsoft and Xbox, going over to LA and commentating on the Forza RC, which was an incredible experience. And to be honest, my first real window into the whole kind of esports world, and just from a racing perspective. So since then, I'd got a very, very basic setup at home, and I thought, no, I need to pull my finger out and get something really good. I guess I've been spoilt a little bit because I've been using a lot of very high-end professional racing sims to train on at Cranfield Simulation and places like that. So I kind of thought, well, I probably can't afford anything at the kind of level that that I'm at that's going to be really beneficial to me from a training point of view. I'm better to go thing more high end like Cranfield. But then I got my own sort of sim sort of coming together around the beginning of this year, really, and so that kind of came together a bit through meeting people like Thrustmaster at the Autosport show, who've been kindly working with me a bit, and Next Level Racing, and getting a really good home rig built up basically, and then sort of progressing to the point where I'm like, okay, right, I feel like I'm ready to start trying to stream. I'm used to vlogging, of course, through my YouTube channel. As we were just discussing a moment ago, streaming it's a whole other kettle of fish in terms of some of the technical obstacles you have to overcome, and getting things to work well, because I'm very much like, I want my videos to be high quality and engaging and good to watch. I don't want something that just looks like I've kind of cobbled it together with bad bad skills.
Yeah, but I have to say, I've been watching your videos, Go Charlie, and love the Nürburgring that you went to, and you had to get your permit. And I think what's brilliant is you come across as such warmth that you bring to your videos, which I know that people who are going to watch you on your streams are going to absolutely love. Particularly enjoyed you trying to pronounce the name towards the end. That was a highlight for me, because I feel like just trying to pronounce different names is I always find challenging enough. But that warmth you're able to take into the sim if you're streaming. But when it comes down to the fundamentals of driving, how have you found that? Are you happy with your setup?
I am happy with my setup. I mean, I found that certainly there's going from racing in a physical car, and then racing on a sim where I'm like a professional sim where I'm just purely trying to develop things and learn things that are very, very relatable. I'm driving with an actual model of the car that I'm racing, and then going to kind of more of like a home gaming sim. It's it's almost like there's different kind of elements to that, and I found it really enjoyable actually, because if I'm somewhere like training professionally, and I'm like, right, I'm here for 2 hours, the time is quite limited, and I go perhaps with a set number of objectives, whereas
Yeah.
I found actually online racing at home is a much more, it's something I do for fun. It's also, I do it for learning new tracks and all kinds of things, and certainly in terms of learning the Nürburgring and the Nordschleife, it's been an absolute necessity, really.
Yeah.
But then there obviously comes other kinds of frustrations with that, because inevitably when you're racing people online, there's that whole thing of there are people that don't race like they would race a real car, and they crash into you, and you have penalty systems. So it's, on the one hand it's really fun, but then it can be quite frustrating. But I'm really enjoying it, to be honest. I'm getting more and more into it. I find like what initially just started out actually is me buying a second-hand PS4 to learn Pikes Peak when I was going to try and do that a few years ago. And I looked online and I was like, right, okay, what games have got this? And I think Dirt Rally had it. So it was literally like, what's the cheapest way I can get this set up at home and learn
Yeah.
Pikes Peak? To suddenly being really, really sucked into the whole world of online racing, and now I'm doing it every day pretty much, and I love it. It's yeah.
Well, the thing is, I'm glad to know that you're doing it every day, because that's how the best drivers in the sims are managing to compete week in, week out with all the different tournaments. Now I know that you basically the drive and passion and exuberance that you have, and I read this in the Guardian. You're always conquering your greatest fears and living in every moment, the joy that you bring to things, which I think is the ideal attitude to have. But when you are on the Sims and you're learning these new skills and how to drive, the driving line changes. I wanted to know, because it keeps coming up, the lack of depth perception. How are you finding that when you're going to get into certain corners where you have to, if you don't brake, you're coming off the track? How are you finding that perception?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I suppose you just a lot of like you say, a lot of repetition and familiarity with each particular course, and you where there's
Mm,
perhaps gaps in your vision and things like that. Your brain almost works out its own kind of map in 3D of like, okay, I can't see where I want to look, but I know that the corner goes there and I'm here. And it almost like it's a bit like, for example, when you're in an LMP3 car or something, a prototype where you've got very restrictive cabin architecture
mm,
and you'll be coming into a particular corner and you can't see the curbs, you can't see the apex. So it's things like, you know, when you're driving that car in the physical world, you'd come into a corner and a long way off, you'd almost like spot your apex while you can see it. And then
mm,
then you drive to a point where you can't see it. But in your mind, you've got this kind of this little kind of waypoint that you've kind of logged that you know where it is. And I suppose it's to an extent it's kind of using similar techniques to that. And I mean, I found as well when I was using VR, for example, VR is fantastic, but one of the shortcomings that I found at the moment is that quite often there's a little bit of fuzziness, which really
mm,
affects your long range vision. So you're okay up to a point, but then when you're trying to spot something a long, long way off, certainly when you're doing your initial kind of sighting laps, it can actually be harder because although you have this fantastic 3D effect, which helps your depth perception, your brain's also having to fill in the gaps a little bit and compensate for that. So I feel like currently there's whatever you're using, there's always some element of compromise, and it's down to you to
mm.
try and adapt to that and find little workarounds. Yeah.
Yeah, and because I was just being fascinated by that crossover, it's like you're almost having to learn everything again, and yet still remember the same skills you had before, but now process them in a different way. What about the pedals and the throttle and things like that? How are you finding that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, so the Sims rig that I um, got on loan from Formula E, this has got a load cell, and it's really handy to drive. The setup I've got at home doesn't have a load cell, and I've got used to using that. It's worth saying that I'm using it on a PS4, so I'm really keen to get a play. Sorry, I'm really keen to get a PC
Yeah,
and sort of develop it a bit more. But I found a lot of the games on the PlayStation, you you can pretty much just stamp on the brake. And in
yeah,
terms of the modulation on the brake, um, there's still an element of modulation there, but it doesn't allow you that kind of element of finesse with the brake to really
mm,
control and rotate the car. I found using the load cell, it just gives you so much more control to kind of pivot the car, especially with the Formula E car, because it doesn't really have any downforce. And you
yeah.
really need to kind of rotate it and drift it into corners. And suddenly the load cell is like, I'm like, wow, this is a big game changer. So yeah, I mean, accelerator pedal, not so much because I guess really with that, it's you might want to limit the travel or something, but ultimately,
Mm,
I found again another thing with the Formula E car because it's so much torque from like no throttle, and a lot of the Formula E courses have got really, really tight hairpins. It's so easy to spin the car coming, trying to get on the throttle earlier. So things like backing the throttle sensitivity. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are really like, yeah, yeah, you know, these are obvious things. But to me, going into that championship at the weekend, I was just trying to. I only got the sim running a few days before, and I was really trying to hit the ground running and just figure these things out to try and help me go that bit quicker every time.
Yeah, well, because I mean, this is perfect because some people will be in your same position as well. They've got their rig and they're thinking, right, they, yes, as you say, they might be obvious things, but you only realize that through doing it and then learning from it and improving. And I did notice it seemed brutal because it was one moment when you got eliminated out. Ricardo Sanchez was just in front of you. You went from 22nd to 17th and vice, and it kept going. And yes, you're talking about the rear end, just a lot of it was pretty much drifting at one point in certain races and drivers. It was very chaotic. But are you looking forward to getting back in and maybe driving in a different car, perhaps?
I am. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm really enjoying racing this championship. I feel a bit like it's really like being thrown in at the deep end with all the lions because the level was so high, and I think there's an element of frustration because you always want to push yourself and do better than perhaps you feel like you could have done better on the day. I'd like to drive some other cars. I mean, I'm very much focused on trying to do as much as I can at the Nürburgring at the moment. So that's all kind of GT car based. But I mean, it's like being in a kid in a sweet shop, really, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
you've got all the tracks of the world, you've got all the cars, you've got servers and places you can go and race everybody. And I do feel a bit like it's a bit like Alice going down the rabbit hole because you just like the more you go into this world, the more it draws you in, and then you start meeting or learning about all the different drivers and personalities. And at the moment, again, I'm quite limited. I mean, I guess one of the first people I came across was Jimmy Broadbent, and
Yep.
so you know, but there's and of course there are so many incredible sim racers out there, and just learning who these different people are, and then connecting with them on social media and interacting. It's yeah, it's a fantastic community, and it's lovely the way it's very it's very accessible because you can easily connect with people and start up a bit of a dialogue with them. Whereas when you're talking about professional racing drive, you can't just message Fernando Alonso and sort of say, hey, start chatting to him about a race or something.
Yeah.
Whereas you can connect with your heroes in the online world, quite easily.
Well, it's definitely more accessible, and I think for that reason, it's great to have you in the show. And I will speak to the producers about getting you some merch. I will
Yes,
do that,
please.
Charlie, if I can. We'll sort that out. Listen, a question from the audience wanted to know: do you have an esports racing coach or friends helping you understand the differences between esports versus real life racing?
Do you know? I'm just trying to think. Not exactly. I mean, I've got friends who just trying to think. Friends who are kind of from that world who've done not necessarily like professional esports racers, but people who've got more experience than I have, who've tried to give me some pointers, and definitely
Mm,
that's been really helpful. And I think also just watching. So after the race on Saturday, I went and watched. Jimmy Broadbent streamed his race, so I went and watched his onboard back and watched and tried to analyze how he was driving the car and trying to find the time. One
yeah.
thing that I do have that's really handy, and something I did actually before that race, a guy that I work with called Gavin Goff, who is the racing mind coach, who actually,
Mm,
it's interesting because he worked with Nismo on GT Academy when that was set up, when they
okay.
found Jan Mardenborough, who obviously went on to become a Nismo Works driver. So he actually worked with Jan quite a bit, but more once Jan had come from the online gaming world into the physical world, and Nissan were putting him in cars and stuff. So we started working last year, and we work on things like NLP and basically, when a driver says, "Oh yeah, I was totally in the zone," and that
Yeah.
those moments when, for any sports person, when you're just what is the zone state and how do you access it? Well, that's working with your subconscious and letting your subconscious take over. So it's really understanding that relationship between the conscious mind and the subconscious, and kind of programming your conscious mind to do things and your subconscious to do things. So you can become more efficient. And certainly for endurance racing, that can be really, really important. So, yeah, Gavin's been fantastic, and we did a session on Saturday morning before the race, which actually helped me a lot because there was one particular corner where I was really struggling, and I just couldn't find a technique. I could find a quick way around it, but I could probably only do it like 3 out of 5 times, and we worked through that. And so, yeah, definitely.
Well, that's fascinating
He's
because
a clever guy.
yeah, that's the first time it's come up, the neuro-linguistic programming idea of helping drivers. Would you say? I mean, that's fascinating. That in itself, it almost needs a whole show that we discuss that at a later date. Just another question come in. This is coming from Billy Malpin, who says, "What is your biggest challenge to overcome in getting faster at esports racing?"
Well, I mean, I feel like I'm not bad at the point I'm at, but the thing, I think the biggest challenge can be your own frustration, if I'm honest, because the weekend, the guys at the front, it was a 2-second margin, which in one way doesn't sound a lot, but yeah, 2 seconds, you know yourself, it's a lot in the racing world. And I practiced, and I did a little bit of setup on the car, but then again, when you've got so many parameters that you can alter, caster, rake, camber, tire pressure, I kind of feel a bit like I'm better just getting to a point where I can extract the maximum out of the car with a baseline setting before I do anything on, apart from things like move your brake balance forwards and, obvious stuff. But it's the things like, it's when you reach that point where you're just driving, you're like, you do an hour, and then you're like, I can't go any quicker than this time. And then you think, right, I'm going to have a break, and you come back and you're like, right, okay, I'm sure my subconscious has digested this. And you don't go any quicker, and you do it the next day, and you just hit a brick wall. And that, I think that frustration is one of the biggest challenges, because ultimately you're there on your own. You can't see other people's on board. You don't, and again, you don't know what setup they're using. So they might be able to brake a bit later. They might, whatever. And I think that can be really almost kind of toxic, because then you get frustrated. Then you start driving the car. Then you're just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And,
you're rage quitting. Charlie, you're getting close. It sounds like you're going to get closer to rage quitting. So that's the greatest thing to overcome. Honestly, I can assure you now, there'll be more of those on the way for you, Charlie. Listen, time is ticking, and I want to ask you the quick fire questions. I'm going to set my timer. Are you ready for the quick fire questions, Charlie Martin? Okay, good. All right, that's the first question done. Favorite food dish to eat?
Curry.
Okay, take it. Best skills outside of driving?
Graphic design.
Ooh, best circuit to race on?
Spa.
If you could interview anyone, who would you interview?
Oh, Nürburgring. Sorry. Interview anyone who could interview. I think the guy behind me, Timo Bernhard.
Okay. Toughest challenge in driving you faced?
Driving in insane rain where you just cannot even see where you're going, and trying to stay committed.
Most influential person. I can imagine, not just in one, it's everywhere. Most influential person in your career so far?
Wow. Oh, gosh.
I didn't say they'd be easy.
One of my friends, Fabien Boudibon, he's a really amazing guy who I met hill climbing when I was competing in Europe, and somebody who just opened up a lot of opportunities for me and helped me and believed in me, and that really enabled me to push myself and do more than I ever imagined in my career so far. So yeah, I think Fabien, definitely.
Big shout out to Fabien. And finally, surfing in Bali or completing Ninja Warrior?
Oh, that's difficult. Well, being as I've not had a holiday since over a year and a half, and the last one was Bali, it might have to be Bali. But to be honest, getting up that wall first time and hitting the button and getting a big
Yeah.
hug off Ben Shepherd was a definitely one of the highlights of my life. So it's a tough call.
Well, listen, they're not easy, these quickfire questions. Congratulations, Charlie Martin. That was a quickfire question round done. Really getting a sense of who you are. Listen, there's so much more I wanted to get into and talk to you about. I read a quote from you. It says, I'm trying to help create a positive change on society. And I suppose that really leads me, because I wanted to talk about diversity in motor racing. So from
Mm-hmm.
when you started to now, and this is a big topic, but how have things changed, or where do you think they're at, and where do we need to go with it? What can we do more?
I think in terms of motorsport, I think I mean, the first thing to say is I love motorsport. I love the fact that it feels like a big family, and when you belong to that, when you're part of it as a fan, as a driver, mechanic, media, well, it's phenomenal, and I'd never want to change that feeling. But I also think that when you look at motorsport, okay, there's not a lot of diversity. It is a very traditional sport, and I think that I think that I feel like I I'm proud of what I've tried to contribute in the last few years in terms of being visible and sharing my story, because I think the more people you have that share stories like that, the more people that will just actually, you know, somebody who's been through a life experience like me of, being transgender, it it just ceases to be a thing. It's
Mm,
not an obstacle. It's just, it's just like anyone else in life. But we're not there yet. And I think the thing I found growing up was that I there was never anyone like me. So I just told myself it's impossible. I can't be me and be successful in motorsport, or for that matter, a lot of other things. And I think that's really limiting when you grow up through your whole childhood with that belief that actually I can't achieve that. I can't be there. I can't do that. I can't. And so really, I think we're things are moving forwards in motorsport in terms of things like Racing Pride, which I'm really proud to be working with them as an ambassador. And I think that we through Racing Pride we've got a good I guess sort of 15 or so members right now off the top of my head, people who identify as LGBT within the motorsport community from all different backgrounds, who are working together to just use their visibility and their experience to kind of gently sort of create change and to encourage other people to say, look, it's not a big deal. Everyone can be their true authentic self in motorsport, and we can be supported. But I think we still are at quite an early days position,
mm,
really, because we don't have, like anything else, like any other walk of life, like any other organization, there are going to be a lot of people who identify as LGBT plus, but it's right now those people aren't visible, and it's not like everybody has to be visible. It's a personal choice, of course it is,
mm,
but I think it's the people feeling that they can be visible, and people not having to compartmentalize aspects of their life that are really sort of true to the core of who they are as a human being. It's when people don't have to censor things that they want to say, when someone wants to bring their partner with them, uh, you know,
mm.
to race, or they want to kiss them on a podium, or just things like
Yeah.
that people all these little things that if you've not grown up as LGBTQ plus, then you've probably never experienced those sorts of feelings of self censorship where you've just done things and you never thought twice about it. But I think that is really the goal, is getting to a point where it's just not even it doesn't have to be a topic of discussion, and it doesn't have to be a thing that people are saying, well, actually this is important to me and I want to do what I can do to try and move things forwards. So yeah, I think it's just bringing more diversity into the sport. And as you know, I mean, diversity in any organization, when you have more
Yeah.
diversity, people think of solutions and ideas and things that from people that come from all different perspectives and angles. So you come up with more creative solutions that benefit everybody, that work for everybody. So, I mean, even if you're just going to look at it commercially, there's a huge case for it. But I think just on a holistic level, it's got to be better for everybody.
Yeah, indeed. I know that extensively researching and getting your viewpoint on everything. And hey, if this community in the sim world and the real life racing can grow and change is a brilliant thing that has new ideas, new things come from it. So I'm really looking forward to finding out a bit more about it from watching your work. And is the 24-hour Le Mans that's still a goal that you want to accomplish?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I don't think it will ever, excuse me, I don't think we'll ever stop being a goal until I do it, because
Yeah.
I you know, I went to, when I got into motorsport, I went to a few races, around, I'm from the Midlands, so I went to Donington Park quite a lot. And saw, things like the ELMS there, I saw DTM and stuff, but small attendance in terms of the volume of
Mm.
people. So I'd never been to anything like Le Mans. And when you go and you see how many people are there, over 250,000 people there for a week, it's just phenomenal. It leaves such an impression on you, and it left such an impression on me. And I'm also a massive Francophile. I mean, I raced in France for 3 years. I speak fluent French, and so I'm very much, a big part of my heart is in France. And all these things combined, and it's just the romance of that race and the place. So I'm going to keep pushing and trying, and I believe in my heart that somehow it's going to come together. It's going to happen. Yeah.
Well, listen, my fingers are crossed for you, Charlie. It's such a fascinating insight, not only the Sims, but trying to understand how things can change and be a better place for any community. So listen, I wish you all the best of luck. It's so great to have you on Nitro Nights to give an insight into your world. And listen, I'd love to have you back on another show. Best of luck for the Sims. What's going to be your next race?
So next race coming up is Hong Kong this Saturday. It's all starting at 3:30. So yeah, please tune in. I'd like to try and stream the race as well, but I'm just conscious of not overloading myself with things that I'm trying to do, and so yeah, it might be next week that I get up and running. But yeah, Hong Kong. I've done a few laps already, got the circuit in my head, really excited about it, and I'm going to be aiming for qualifying higher this time round. So yeah,
Indeed.
thanks for having me on the show, Tom. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, anytime. And listen, knowing you, I know for a fact that you will definitely never say no to any opportunity. So I'm guaranteeing Charlie probably will be streaming live because she is a yes person. Listen, that wraps us up for the show today on Nitro Nights. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Twitter. Go and check out Charlie's Go Charlie YouTube page as well, and go and watch some of the videos there. Fantastic stuff there. So listen, we will see you on Friday, but from now, it's goodbye from everyone on the team.